this year, we told you how the city of Crystal was removing more than 60 stop signs. The city says from a safety standpoint, several of them were just not needed. Reporter Meredith Hackler shows us how some Crystal residents don't agree.
I've talked to several neighbors and they think it's a very bad idea. It puts public safety at risk.
Robert Bellows has lived in the city of Crystal for decades. He says that ever since the four-way stop at 58th and Hampshire Avenues was changed to a two-way stop, people have been speeding in his neighborhood more often.
A child is going to get hit, or someone on a bicycle or a pedestrian is going to get hit as a result. We had one car last week that came through here probably about 60, 70 miles an hour.
According to data we received from the city, that intersection has under 200 vehicles per day, which is on the low side of normal for residential streets in the city. The data also shows 90% of the traffic through the intersection was traveling under 35 miles per hour.
From a safety standpoint, there are some studies that suggest that uncontrolled intersections can be safer, and the theory on that is that drivers are hopefully being a little more cautious because they don't necessarily know if they have the right of way or not.
And while some residents find this change to be problematic, other residents say they've seen a positive impact from the removal of the stop signs in their neighborhood.
I was happy to see that less people were rolling through stop signs, particularly this one near a park, and they said to me that the stop sign gives pedestrians a false sense of security, especially in this situation, because if kids think that, you know, people are going to stop for them, they might walk across the street into somebody rolling through this stop sign.
As for those who are concerned, police say never hesitate to call them with issues that you see.
They should contact us. We have several different abilities to work with Public Works to do a study on that area. If it's a matter of wanting more police presence, we can do directed patrols or extra patrols in that area. In
Crystal, Meredith Hackler, CCX News.
Local Liberians and other immigrants living in the United States are closer to a pathway for U.S. citizenship. Reporter Sonia Goen joins us now with more on the latest developments in Congress. Sonia?
Shannon, last week, the American Dream and Promise Act passed out of the House Judiciary Committee. Several advocates with Brooklyn Park-based African Career Education and Resources Incorporated were in Washington pushing for the legislation.
This is huge. What it means is that, finally, we get to push through a bill that will provide full citizenship for people who are holders of DED.
Minnesota is home to the largest Liberian population in the United States, many right here in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center. Some Liberians have been on deferred enforced departure for 30 years, living and working in Minnesota, paying taxes. This legislation would help thousands of people who are on temporary protective status, deferred enforced departure, and DACA. The bill would provide certain protections and an option for people to seek legal permanent residency and a chance to earn citizenship.
Allow, first for green card, permanent residency, and then eventually citizenship. It may take about 3 years before that happens, but at least people would then be, for once, not having all of these annual extensions.
Now the full House is expected to vote on the bill sometimes next week. Shannon?
All right, thank you, Sonia. Poet Robert Frost wrote, "Good fences make good neighbors." But in Brooklyn Park, two neighbors are at odds over a fence. This summer, Leopold's Mississippi Gardens will host more than 40 wedding ceremonies on the land close to the river. And they would like to erect a 6-foot-tall fence to keep wedding guests on their property and give neighbors more privacy. The neighbors don't want the fence, saying it would obstruct the view.
We do not need that building to become another vacant business. We also want our residents to be happy in their homes and not leave Brooklyn Park.
I'll vote in favor for this. If it was house to house, I would not be. But I think there's a separation from a business to a residential property here, and concessions were made.
The council did vote to allow the variance for the fence, but with only one council member voting against. Both the business and the neighbors say they will go to mediation to help resolve the issue. An aerial survey found that Brooklyn Park's deer herd is more than 40% larger than it was last year. The city works with a group of bow hunters to control the deer population through hunts during the fall. This is done to reduce the number of deer car-related accidents, which has drastically fallen since the controlled hunts began back in 2011. The City Council approved hunts for 3 weekends for this fall in 11 different zones of the city. Students in the Robbinsdale School District had the opportunity to learn about social justice issues outside of the classroom on Thursday. More than 250 area high school students made their way to North Hennepin Community College in Brooklyn Park for the 4th annual Social Justice Day. The students took part in sessions that teach them about social justice activities in their communities, how to become activists, and how to improve the educational outcomes for students of color.
I'm really excited. This is our future. These students will someday be in my position, and we want to give them the skills now so that when they graduate from high school, they carry those skills with them into their life or their career choices.
Students from Cooper, Armstrong, and Robbinsdale's Highview Alternative program took part in Thursday's event. You will notice something a little bit different this year when driving or walking through the city of New Hope. New streetlight banners will be installed on 42nd Avenue between Louisiana and Xylon Avenues. Instead of the banners just being in English, there will also be banners in Spanish, Hmong, Vietnamese, and Swahili. Those, along with English, are the top 5 languages spoken in the Robbinsdale School District. The city hopes the new banners promote inclusiveness and the city's diversity. And a reminder for you, of course, you can see this story and many more stories on our website, ccxmedia.org.
It's all about getting hot at the right time. The Champlin Park baseball team didn't have the kind of regular season they're used to, but the Rebels are in contention now for a section title. Corey Davis of the Rebels facing top seed Totino-Grace in the Section 5-4A tournament. Bottom of the third, Quinn German's bat hop bounce into third turns into a force out at second, but a run scores. The Eagles get 3 runs in the inning to go up 4-1. Down 5-1 in the 6th. Tyler Gurkeen drives one to deep left field for Champlin Park. Cameron Hammond scores to pull the Rebels within 5-2. And they keep the rally going in the 7th. Gurkeen's soft liner just eludes Ben Palmer as Hammond scores to tie the game at 5, and it goes to extra innings. In the 9th, guess who? Gurkeen liner off the tip of the second baseman's glove. Carter Fox races around with a go-ahead run. Rebels hold Grace in the bottom of the 9th, and they score a 6-5 stunner in 9 innings. Champlin Park advances to the winner's bracket final Friday night. One day earlier, Champlin Park defeated Osseo in the first round of that tournament. The Orioles looked to stay alive in the double elimination tourney when they hosted Spring Lake Park. Bottom second, tied at 1. Andrew Townsend's ground out is good enough to plate Walker Holtgren, and the Orioles are on top 2-1. Top of the third, SLP's Ben Tice sends a shot to the gap. Elijah Schoenrock and Sam Fritz score, and the Panthers go up 3-2. Bottom of the 6th, Holtgren slices a fly ball, and it gets down in the left field corner. Nelson Lynch hustles around to score, and it's 3-all on the double by Holtgren. He moves to third on a sacrifice bunt, and then Noah Thompson with a fly ball to the outfield deep enough to score Holtgren, and the Orioles lead 4-3. The Panthers tied up in the 7th, but the rally ends when John Klein throws out the runner at second base. Bottom 7, Osseo with a winning run at third, and Seamus Reese with a shot to the gap. A.J. Valeri scores the winning run, and Osseo takes it 5-4 on the walk-off by Reese, and the Orioles keep their season going in Section 5-4A. Amir Coffey announced Wednesday that he will stay in the NBA draft and forego his senior season at the University of Minnesota. There was some speculation Coffey would remove himself from the draft and return to the Gophers for one more season, but that deadline is now passed. Last season, Coffey averaged 16.6 points, 3.6 rebounds, and 3.2 assists per game, while leading the Gophers to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Coffey chose DU after a standout career at Hopkins High School, in which he was named Mr. Basketball as a high school senior. Draft projections have Coffey being picked anywhere from 45th to unselected. The NBA draft is June 20th at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Time again for our weekly CCX Sports Fishing Tip. This week, Terry Tuma talks about a versatile artificial lure that can be effective when fishing for crappies and bass.
Tubes. I call them tube magics because there's so many factors to help us catch crappies and bass. One is to make sure that the size of the jig head, the weight of that jig head is going to get into that strike zone. That's number one. Then number two is that, when you're fishing with a tube, is make sure that these tentacles are not stuck together. If you cannot get them apart, get rid of it and put a fresh one on. Also, too, do not be afraid to shorten up that tentacle for more of a short bite or a subtle presentation. If you pull some of these tentacles out, you're obviously going to get more action out of that tube. So that's just some of the plus factors. You can use them with a bobber system, you can cast, you can troll them, so many uses. And then we should never forget about using tubes for bass fishing. The same applications apply. And then when you're using tubes, especially for crappie fishing, add a crappie minnow or a small fathead. And then two, I use a long rod with nanofill line, 4-pound test, because these tubes are going to run quite a bit deeper, much easier to cast further distances wide, very sensitive line, and it's going to help us catch a lot more crabs. Give Tube Magic a try. You'll be very, very successful.
Thanks, Terry. That's all for sports. More news after this.